What is up, y'all? So we are going to be going over some coaching strategy type stuff, more so dealing with kids on the mental plane and how you can, excuse me, understand their perspectives and manipulate the situations to get the best out of your kids. So, but first thing we're going to look at, because I'm the arbiter of truth in the swimming community, is we're going to talk about something that nobody is covering, and apparently it happened September 24th. So that would have been yesterday, right? No, 2 days ago, Tuesday. So obviously I recorded this on Thursday, and yeah, basically I guess it was some type of hazing incident at Gettysburg College where a swimmer had the N-word carved into his chest. It doesn't say if it's like if it's N dash word or if it was, I don't say it, it's well, that's another story for another time. But yeah, it was a swim team, I think is what it says. So we're gonna look at that first, and then following that we will get into the content. All right, so here we go. So we have it here. Let's zoom in. Swim team members, you can see right there. Several students were attending an informal gathering on a non-campus residence. Sounds like hazing. When one of them used a box cutter to scratch the N-word on another student's chest, according to his teammates made by the college and the family. Yo, swim, step your game up. USA Swimming, what you doing? Just like I said in last interview I did, they don't care. They don't really care about us. Shout out to Michael Jackson. And it's not that I'm asking that people care, but it's like, yo, if you're gonna say you care, then yeah, I'm gonna be on your ass about it when you don't, because this is like clearly you don't, right? So it ain't about whether I don't care. Like, I'm doing my own thing because I believe in the private sector. And if you want something, just like Thanos says, you got to do it yourself. You want something done, do it yourself. So, I'm doing my thing. Hold on one second. I'm doing my thing. Drayden's doing his thing. Shout out to him. But yeah, you can see this stuff is pretty crazy. I mean, and this is the thing, right? This is why I wanted to talk about it. One, because, like I said, arbiters of truth. We're bringing you the real. So here's something that you didn't know that was happening in some community that is. And the thing is, like, in my personal swimming experience, I've never, other than just like people just being like, oh my God, it's a black guy swimming and he's killing everybody. Like, that's about the extent of any racism I've experienced. And I wouldn't even call it racism. I call it more like people dealing with their own prejudice. Like, we have racism, prejudice, and then bias, right? I'd say maybe I was between bias, more on the bias than prejudice side. But yeah, like, if you had asked me, I'm like, I know it exists because I am an outlier in a sport that is not basketball or football or track. So I know I stand out. But, I went to, white middle class, upper middle class neighborhood. My neighborhood had a state in its name. Shout out to Oak Bluff. And shout out to Forest Creek Elementary School, Ridgeview Middle School, Round Rock High School, Dragons, Mythological Beast. But yeah, that's where I'm from. So it's like, and everybody, as far as I know or was aware, like, I received a ton of love. I definitely stuck out like a sore thumb and was, kicking ass. But yeah, like, if you had asked me, I'd be like, yeah, it's not, I haven't experienced any racism. And my experience would lead me to say that, yeah, there's no racism in the sport. Now, obviously, that's bias, or there's definitely bias, right? But racism, I'd be like, nah, I haven't experienced it. You have your, white friends who, when you're not around, use the N-word when you're singing rap songs, but, that happens. And, they're usually, like, super apologetic. But, yeah, man, like, it's out there, right? It can't not be present. And, you see something like this, and it's just like, well, can't say that anymore. But yeah, this is crazy. I don't know what the bad word version of incredible is, but yeah, this is crazy. See, this way it makes you think it's a hazing act because you're doing hazing stuff. It's like, okay, I'll do it, like, but I ain't tripping. And I think people got to stick up for themselves. Like a box cutter to scratch a word onto my chest. If this is me, like, you ain't about to take no box cutter to me because, like, I don't know you, right? I mean, you got recruited, so you know them that way. But I ain't trying to say, parents, what are you doing? But dog, like. Box cutter comes out, we fighting. Like, well, I'm just gonna say no and walk away. Like, there's no way that a box cutter, and this isn't like victim blaming, maybe you want to call it is, but call it what you want to call it. Like, I just don't understand how you could see a box cutter and think, oh, I'm gonna follow through with this. Like, they have no grounds, which is honestly like kind of what we're talking about, this mental point of view thing we're talking about next. Like, to me, there's no grounds where you can say no and not have plausible deniability for forgiveness, right? Like, if I'm getting hazed and somebody pulls out a box cutter, I say, no, I ain't doing that. What are they going to do? Treat me bad so I can be like, yo, you're treating me bad because I wouldn't let you cut me with a box cutter? Like, their goose is cooked. So it's like, I don't know. So there's definitely more to the story than meets the eye. The kid who got cut up had all the leverage. It says scratch, so I'm thinking it was just like a little surface, scab, go away, but it'll definitely leave, a little scar. And damn, dude, like getting the N-word on your chest, like that's crazy. No place on this campus for words or actions based on one's identity. It's always funny how people use words. Like, I love the human language because I'll use words like dickhead, dirtbag to describe people, and it's like, no, I'm not using it as an insult. It's an insulting word, but it has a meaning, and you are that meaning. So it's an accurate representation. So I'm insulting you with an accurate definition to insult you. It's not just some ad hominem horse shit. You know what I'm saying? So you gotta be very careful about how people use words. For instance, no matter the relationship, no matter the motivation, there is no place on this campus for words or actions that demean or marginalized based on identity and history. So as long as it's not based on that, let it rip. Which, quite frankly, I feel like that's fair. There are definitely certain instances where, like, this is my personal beliefs, where this stuff is a green light. But, based on things they can't control, like, that's kind of messed up. You shouldn't be doing that. Although I'm not even sure. That's kind of a way to get around this. Because that doesn't, like, the N-word is not really based on, I mean, it is one's identity and history, but it's not. You know what I mean? Like the, I ain't about to say it, but the Asian word for I've been working on the railroads, that one would be very accurate. Right? And that would fit this criteria. But the N-word, like, it was a word used to describe people that were a certain color, so I can get that identity. But the history one, people still use it today, right? So, I don't know. You gotta be careful. You gotta be careful about people's words. That's how they get you. Not a byproduct of an athletic team culture or function. Yeah, that happens, bro. That shit happens. Where it's just one person like, oh, this is funny. Especially now, because white people be using the N-word like crazy. Hip-hop culture has gone crazy. I mean, look, when I grew up, if you were white, you spoke with like a certain class, right? And your vernacular. And, when you start talking black, it's just like, yo, like, what are you doing? And now I hear people say like blood type shit. Like, oh my God, somebody was on Instagram. He said, he's like, what is blood talking about? Or I'm just like, I click on this nerd's profile. And it's him, like, getting ready for prom, like, with this girl over, like, yeah, all smiling. And I'm just like, yo, like, what are you talking like you a gangbanger? Like, and you getting ready for prom. Like, I know your mom and your dad are proud of you. What are you doing? And it's just like, anyway, yeah, like, that stuff happens, bro. Like, especially now, everybody just thinks they can say whatever and there's no consequences. Like, I believe that it's not a byproduct of an athletic or an unhealthy team culture. I just believe it's, teenagers, because, half of your team is 18, 19-year-olds being idiots. And in a culture today where you can get away with it, like, the word still holds weight to certain people. So, like, I can get the mistake, but damn, bro, like, that's why we're going to talk about thinking, because it's like, how do you make that mistake and not realize that, oh, I can say it now, it's 2024, which you can't, and then mess it up. Like, damn, bro, what an idiot. We need to acknowledge the harm that is posed to members of our community who by virtue have long been marginalized. I hate that word, marginalized. I hate that word. Chief Diversity Officer. What the fuck? Oh, excuse me. What is that? I hate some of the stuff I hate, because it's just like, okay, so you're giving this person the authority or based on his feelings. So I'm sure there's no real book, what he deems correct. Well, what if a new person gets it who's the opposite color or the opposite beliefs? So he has the same power? Like, language, bro. Language. You gotta be careful. See, the thing is, I bet this dude probably gonna stick up for his friend too. I'm not saying he should be prosecuted like they're saying here, but it's just like, damn, like, just misguided kid does something really, really, really stupid, and now it's hell's unleashed, Reached out to NAACP, which isn't even owned by black people, in case you didn't know. Stay woke. Family says their son was the victim, said these members of coaching staff, and similarly dismissed. Wait. The family who says their son was the victim said he was interviewed by members of the coaching staff and dismissed. The family who says their son, the victim, was dismissed? What? Oh, so it sounds like everybody was suspended. Get everybody out of here. Clean house. Yeah, it doesn't say, other than this right here. The family who says their son was the victim. So the victim was interviewed by members of the coaching staff and dismissed. So I bet this must have been him wanting to not be here. But yeah, crazy world we live in. All right, so we're going to get into this. So this video we're going to watch is from Math, and it's kind of interesting because I've said, let's not say that. It's one of my friends was watching this video, and he's talking about like the levels of thinking, and I was like, oh, it gets to a certain level, and I was like, oh, I spent a lot of time in this level, and it's like 8, 9, and it's basically where you're really looking at the different perspectives of people and their groups, and those groups based on where they're raised and what about where they're raised, how that forms their reality, which then forms their relationships based within their culture, right? So their culture behaves like this, and it's like, if you're a coach, you got to be able to know that, okay, this kid has this culture, this kid has this culture. How can I get all these people on the same page for victory? So I kind of got a little bit into like second and third order thinking in the last video. Now, this isn't quite second and third order thinking. It's because those usually an action happens, and then what are the consequences from it? But this is kind of just another way that it's a great coaching tool, being able to see the big picture of what's going on. So it's a 26-minute video. Looks like we've been going for 12 minutes. So we're going to let it run. We'll probably be an hour in or whatever. Hopefully I can do a better job of stopping and turning the volume up or down. But yeah, like, let's get into it. Actually, I don't even think I need this. Yeah, all right. So let's get into it.
Stages, and this one is only very common in modernized places, and it's the first stage where you can adopt a world-centered level of understanding, which means understanding how people think the way they do based on where they're from. Before that level, there are right and wrong ways of thinking. So you would either be doing it right or you're not, and then they would say you're either doing it right or you're not. After that, it's more like, well, maybe I would think that way.
All right, so this would be like where they say like, oh man, let's fix this video. It'd be like where they say that kids are super honest. That's pretty much that, right? Where they see something and it's just as they are based on what they know. This is that, right? Where it's right or wrong, like Shia law. I think that's right. Shia, if I think it's wrong, I think it's Sunni and Shia. But in that law, right, there's certain restrictions that women have, right? Now, in their culture, they're like, yeah, this is correct. In our culture, would be like, that's wrong. And they obviously, Allah Akbar, are ready to really ride for what they believe in. And we would look at that and be like, these people are awful because of what they believe and how far they're willing to go to basically what we would call oppressing. But no, it's just their way of life, right? They think they're right in their way of life. We think that that's wrong in their way of life. But that's just how they think in their culture, right? And what he's about to talk about next is kind of the next level of thinking where it's like, well, if I grew up only knowing that, I would do that too, because you wouldn't know anything else, right? And in coaching, I think it's an important thing because, especially with the youngsters, they don't know what they don't know. So you have a lot of responsibility to put in a lot of good habits about training in life and just goal achievement, right? If you have them training at a world-class level, which is it's going to be mostly intellectual for them because they're little kids, but applying themselves mentally focused, and all of a sudden they get out in the real world and they're like, oh, like, why can't you do this? Like, I've been doing this my whole life. And we all go through that. We're raised self-centered and we try to be worldly people. But I think it's when you get into your late 20s, you realize like, oh man, like even though I thought I was like thinking about others and not being self-centered, within that context, I was still self-centered, right? There's so much more I could have done. So I think it's just interesting. But anyway, let's get back to it.
I was from there, or maybe I would be more like you if I lived your life. That's where global thinking begins. Speaking of global thinking, this is my first sponsored video. It's brought to you by Higher doesn't mean better person, it means more aware. So here's the lower level of awareness, seeing things, and then as you go higher in the levels of awareness, it becomes much more complex. You're seeing people, seeing almost into infinity. And so when I make mistakes in here, I usually know exactly why they're happening. I usually can say things like, I choose women who probably will not stick around. Why? Because I don't think I can support them anyway. Well, why does that matter? Well, usually most of them want a higher level of support that I can provide. And why does that matter? Well, it doesn't feel good when they leave because I can't support them. Okay, well, why do those feelings matter? Can you change it some other way? Can you get a better job or something? Well, I tried to do that. I'm doing the best that I can. Is there some way that you can change the way you try to get money from the world? Well, I've already done everything I can here, and this kind of gets fuzzy. So why am I spending time with the wrong woman comes back to this experience that I've had over and over and over again, and I haven't been able.
So this is a very important thing, right? So with the Rakely content, everything that I have has gone through this process, right? Where it's like, okay, Pearsall taught me this. Why did he teach me this? What does this allow me to do? What are the landmines of this? Why do those landmines matter? Can they be avoided, right? And then you go into different perspectives where it's like this swimmer who came up this way, why would they not like this? Why would they, what does their background say about this information? Why doesn't it work? Okay, they believe the same thing, but they learned it a different way. Great example is David Marsh and Brett Hawk. David calls it an open recovery. Now, when he taught me this, I remember looking at videos and being like, oh, like all an open recovery is, or like the thing that's common in is your armpit clears the water. And then I started looking at other videos of other swimmers and myself in particular. And it's like, oh man, I'm dragging my biceps through the water. That's not good. That's how I first noticed that or learned about that. And something I, observed club coaching, that a lot of athletes were violating that principle. But I talked to Brett about it a little bit, and I remember he didn't describe it as an open recovery. He said, keep your armpits dry, which is the same thing, not the same thing though at the same time, right? So you can see how like those different perspectives now, and even when David taught it to me, he may have meant something else, right? But the way I perceived it and the way Brett perceived it, assuming they were talking the same thing, right? Same coaching tree. Brett's from David. I learned under David. Maybe he thought about this thing this way, open recovery, and Brett interpreted it this way, and I interpreted it a different way, right? But through the three different ways, you can see a similarity, and that's kind of how coaching trees work, where, you know, you think about other sports, you know, they're running in the spread offense, right? But there's different ways to run the spread offense. So you can tell that all these coaches are from this spread mentality. Who's the godfather of that? Okay, from the option run with Pat White and, you know, West Virginia and Steve Slayton, like, who runs a lot of those spreads, right? So yeah, it's interesting.
Fix. It's the ability to see through what's going on in your mind and also to see through similar levels of complexity in what's going on in the world around you. So it's not about being good, it's about getting it. Moving up in the levels does not always make you more effective. In fact, this level is famous for making people into hippies. This is the point in development where you begin to understand that everyone has their own way of seeing things. And so who's to say what we should and should not do? This is an illustration of an interaction from each level. This girl is getting validation from a guy that she's not interested in. So she knows how to get the validation, and then she stands back and she can plan how to give less to get even more. And then she looks at that and asks, well, is that the right thing to do? Not really. But am I going to do it anyway in this circumstance because I think it would be better overall? So that's in order.
And one thing that's really cool about all this stuff, and I say this, I realized this when I was coaching, getting good with girls in your dating life and understanding how women's feelings is their first kind of filter with as they orient themselves with the world will help you as a coach tremendously, right? Because a lot of people will be like, oh, like girls are emotional, they don't make sense. And it's, if you can understand feelings, how a woman's feelings create a reality, it's a very linear, easy, clear, like cut understanding process. Like, it's not confusing at all. It's only because you're trying to think like a guy and how we think that doesn't make sense. But the reason why you need to know this is because, like, prior to puberty, right, or at least from the guy side, guys or kids and women can smell bullshit a mile away. And that is something that you need to have a high level of integrity if you want your kids to do what you need them to do, right? And if you don't understand how they feel about what you say, what you want them to do, I'm not even saying like he's mean, but you need to be able to portray the feeling of, I'm the authority, I have your back, I'm not going to let you down. If I do, I will apologize for it because we are in this together. Like, you wrap that feeling up, you need to be able to, everything you do, I call it congruency. Every action you do needs to be congruent to whatever your feeling you want them to feel is, right? So if you don't understand how, like I said, with women, it's a much easier thing to, at least for me, it was easy to figure out. Not easy to figure out, but because they'll honestly be who they are, which makes it easy to figure out because you're not going to get them like hiding something. Like women, they're just going to be themselves. You figure out how feelings and how women, how they feel about you determines how they treat you. It is the most important skill to have as a coach because you have to be able to connect with the feelings of kids, all right? You could say women too because moms, right? But in general, like, even on that level, all selling is emotional, right? If you're a business person, you know this to be true. You know, it's not a logical process. Closing is logical. And even when, you know, you're giving a rah-rah speech to a bunch of dudes, you are, you know, for lack of a better term, communicating through feelings. You know, you're communicating through a female medium. So it's all feelings. And if it's as a guy, it's a really hard thing to figure out if you're not actively like trying to. And, you know, with me, you know, I'm trying to master things. So I got very good at it, for lack of a better term. But yeah, like, anyway, so this stuff, I think it's always interesting because, you know, I remember thinking like, oh man, like, this is really helping me be a better coach, like being able to be congruent and like not lie to these kids and make sure that like everything I say always reinforces who I am. So they know that if it comes out of my mouth, I'm not lying to them. They can trust it and that if I am wrong or if I feel like I lied, I'm going to apologize because that's never my intention, right? So, you know.
Wanting something, knowing how to get it from someone, knowing how to control the interaction, knowing whether that's right or wrong according to the rules that you live by. So I really like to plan things out. I like certainty, but at this level, you realize that you're never going to know what happens until you try it. So it goes what I see, what you see, what I really like to plan to do, and people what to do, and people would say, it's like, well, who is anyone to judge my choices? My choices are right for me, and so there isn't really such a thing as right and wrong, it's just what works for me. That's why they call that level the individualist. Different people go through the levels differently, and when I went through this one, it really stressed me out. I felt like I couldn't get my feet on the ground. I saw so many different ways of seeing the world, so many different philosophies, so many different life choices, and I didn't know how to pick one. And if I can't pick one, then I can't get anywhere. So I would say, I don't know what to do, and people would say, just pick something. And I would say, how do I know what to pick? And they would go, pick something you like. And I would go, how do I know what I like? So I really like to plan things out. I like certainty, but at this level, you realize that you're never going to know what happens until you try it.
Okay, that's weird. So, this level that he's talking about, oh, that's what it's called. Okay, there we go. So, the level that he's talking about, if you're an athlete, and this is why I say this is going to be a great tool, I think, for coaches. If you're able to get to this higher level thinking, this is one of the most important things that is that can come from sports. Because like he said, he's a planner and he struggles to make decisions. Sports, for me, made this very easy because you know your purpose, right? You're there to win. You're there to get better. So when you're able to see the solutions, you know your direction. And the thing, I emailed him. I was like, we should talk about this because he said he gets stuck at this. And for me, it's something I don't get stuck on. But I think he's at like level 8. I'm like 8, 9, 10-ish, which kind of loops back into 1 at a different scale. But with sports, you're able, you know your direction, so now it just becomes process of elimination. This is where we say we learn more from losing than by winning. So you have 3 options. You know, like, I want to go this time. Okay, I can see how everything around me is has its own point of view. I need to just trial and error as quickly as I can, fail as big and as fast as I can to figure out the one step that moves me forward. And that's honestly what we do with our Rakely content is everything I have is by trial of error. You know, I'm self-taught, I'll call it elite level butterflyer, watching Phelps film, talking to Ian Crocker, and just breaking down the movement patterns and putting it together to a point where I could train, 6 100s fly on 110, 4 rounds, descending each round, right? So, but that was all trial and error, but I had a direction, right? And that's where, with him, you can kind of tell he doesn't have a direction. And what I mentioned to him is, at that point, that's when you got to start exercising free will and your purpose. And that's kind of where things start looping back, where it's like, okay, I need to make a selfish decision and control my environment, coaching. Like, I want to be this type of coach. Our team needs to get this. How can I manipulate my environment to make a selfish decision to move us towards this goal? So yeah, like, I think this is a super, super beneficial video for coaches. So let's have fun.
So it goes what I see, what you see, what works for me, what works for us. And then, hey, look, those people have a different thing that works for them. That's level 5, when you can say, okay, I'm like this because I'm from here, and you're like that because you're from there. And then at level 6, it's like, well, where I'm from is really just myself. Everybody is just from their self. And so how can one self have an idea that's better than any other self? Whereas at an earlier level, you might be able to say something like, well, my dad was an accountant and...
Right, now, this is the thing where I said it starts looping around. At scale, you got to think about this one he's saying, right, level 4. You could look at level 4 as level 8, and each one of those people, how people interact with each other, as its own individual bubble of their reality, which would be level 6. Which we'll get into. But yeah, it all loops into scale. It all scales, right? And we're not going to talk about that because that's where it's going to start sounding really woo-woo-y. We'll get to that at the end. But yeah, it's essentially, I call it a version of time travel where we're just connecting with the part of us who went through this stuff in the people we're working with, coaching, we have relationships with, etc. And you're communicating to that thing, trying to get to the next level the same way you were. So even if you're unaware of this stuff, you are using it, but you need to harness it, just like our weekly content. You need to harness it, because if you're not harnessing it and controlling it and manipulating each variable, something might get out of hand, and you may think success or attributes to that doing things right, but something was wrong. And the only reason it worked is because this thing you thought was right was wrong, but the wrong thing is now actually correct, and that's why you won. So you run the same thing, but now the thing that was wrong that worked is now correct, and now your same system doesn't work. And now you have kids plateauing. Stuff's important.
So I'm an accountant. That's just what we do, and you don't have to deal with any of this uncertainty. So higher is more complex, but complex is not always good. The way I explain it is that you can have a really good shoe or a really bad car, and I think what I have is a sinking cruise ship. So if higher is not always better, then why should we grow? Well, because higher is usually better. If everyone was at these lower levels, we would not be able to have grocery stores and electricity. We have a complex world, and it requires complex thinking. And some problems cannot be solved at the level they came from. Everybody watching this is going to have a different fingerprint of development. That
funny thing, I don't remember where I heard this, but we're talking about like 2D, 1D, 2D, 3D, and then 4D, fourth dimension. And they were saying that you can only look at something through the dimension beneath it, which is kind of interesting that he said that about you kind of can't solve a problem within the level it's created in. And so like when I'm looking at this computer screen, I see a 2D square, right? I don't see the third dimension, right? But I know I'm in the third dimension. I know it exists, and I live in the third dimension. I know this is actually more of a rectangle, right? My senses tell me that this actually has depth, but I perceive the world in 2 dimensions. Right? If I have a ball, or let's just say this pen, right? There is an angle where I can put it at where it no longer, like that is a circle. It is not an oblong shape. So we see the world in 2Ds. Even this, you see kind of like a rectangular ovular shape, but we know depth because it gets smaller. But really, it would just be a 2D image that is like that, right? It's wide in the top, and then it narrows to give us depth, right? And shadows and stuff allow us to know it's a 3D, but we exist in a 2D plane. So yeah, it's just interesting, right?
Means that your different lines or capacities, or the ways that you use your intelligence, are all going to be developed to different levels. It's possible to be very lopsided. For example, you could have your cognitive line all the way up at 9, but your moral line all the way down at 3. You could also be higher up than another person overall, but they're still way better than you at a particular thing. For example, this could be somebody who really understands history and politics to a high degree but has low empathy, and this would be someone who kind of gets it but is great with people. So as I go through them one by one, try to remember where you went through them and what that felt like and where you think you are now. Okay.
It's kind of what I was talking about when I said the time travel thing, right? You need to think about where you were when you went through those stages.
Level 1, I call this survive, because it's just basic moment to moment, what do I need? Do I need food? Do I need sleep? It's just my own feelings, and there's no such thing as someone else's mind. If we were living in this level, we would be in small survival bands, and we would not be thinking much about each other's thoughts. We would be doing what we must in order to survive. Level 2 I called connect, because now you can think about what is in someone else's mind. What does this person want or need? Primitive people at this level will sometimes do rain dances or throw virgins in a volcano. I'm not sure if that's real, but it's the kind of thing you would expect to see, because at level 2 you're realizing, okay, practices just day to day. Level 3 I called control. This level is still very popular in modern society. So at level 1, I have a mind with feelings and needs, and at level 2, I know that other people have minds with feelings and needs, and sometimes maybe I think a volcano does too. And at level 3, now I know that other people are aware that other people are aware that they have feelings and needs. So I know that these people have a relationship to each other the same way that I have a relationship to this and to
So this is now we're talking about like level 3, right? And I'd say that with your 9 and unders, this is where you're going to see a lot of this. Maybe a lot of level 3, but you'll see. I'd say with your girls, are probably going to be in level 3, but almost all of them. Your boys, you'll probably see a lot of level 1 thinking showing up, maybe level 2, where they're like actually like wrestling each other to get down the pool and get to the wall first, right? Not doing it maliciously, but they're like, I want to be first, right? Not, hey, if I do this, I might throw this elbow and hit this kid in his eye, and now he got to get out the pool, and we got to call his parents, and now I'm in trouble, right? They're not thinking beyond that, right? And that's kind of where we're talking about, like, where you can see the orders of thinking too. But anyway, like being able to understand this and harness it, and for lack of a better term, let's not be a wimp, Dax, to weaponize it, right? You need to be able to weaponize it for good. You know, how can I take these perspectives and get everybody working together for a greater process? That's what teamwork is, right? Sacrifice, etc.
And to this and to this, now I know he has a relationship to her. So instead of just direct connections, this creates social situations. Here is a woman seeing man bad on her phone, and then she sees the man in her life and goes, oh, wait a minute, if man bad, then maybe that man bad. And then at level 3, you would step back and say, well, what do I do about this situation? Why is he being bad, and what can I do about this relationship? If we were living at this level,
like I said with the coaching, I can see what's going on. What do I do about it?
we would be living in something like the Roman Empire, a mythic, feudal, and exploitative empire. You see this level a lot in things like the mafia and in sports teams, firemen, police, military. So even though these levels 2 and 3 involve thinking about thinking, it's mostly just for the purpose of getting what you want and having power over others. Level 4 I called belong because the primary...
That's something I want to talk about because I'm sure somebody's going to be like, oh my God, you're being manipulative. Yes, but on the power over others. Like I said, it's about, I always say this, it's okay to use people, do not abuse people and your relationships with them. And to a degree, the means do justify the ends. Obviously, there's rules and stuff or whatever, but if you're a good person, like that's, like, am I doing this for this kid's greater good, right? Am I doing this so this kid can learn something about the world that is going to help him later? Maybe not when he's 16, 17, 18, maybe when he's 29 and he has a time he needs to focus and step up for everybody else and know their needs and how they're thinking. Actually, I have a great example. I was in a group in college. It was a group project, and there was me, another guy, a third guy, and 2 girls. And the girls, I knew they were going to handle their business. Me and the other guy got our stuff down, and there was one guy who didn't do anything, right? And I kind of like saw it coming a little bit. And I was like, I decided to be the group leader because like I needed to get an A in this project, and I kind of foresaw it coming. So I started like a little bit of work of his stuff. So like as everybody returned in their stuff, to put it together. And then when I didn't hear back from him, I was like, okay, good thing I did this, right? So having that control over everybody and delegating to them. And this thing about power, right? Like if you're a leader, you have power. Like you need to use it for good. But having this and understanding everybody's direct, not ulterior motive, vested interest in themselves, I was able to predict what was going to go down and protect the team, right? We ended up getting a 96 on the project, got a 96 for the course, whatever it is. And that kid ended up, we flunked his ass. He got a grade based off of what the group thought about his participation. So, yeah, we nuked him.
Drive is to fit in, and that drive is motivated by what they call second-person perspective. So again, at level 1, you have your own feelings, urges, and needs. At level 2, you see those of others and you can react to them, but it's still all about what those feelings mean to you. And at level 3, you understand that you're in a complex social...
Right, with the boys who are wrestling each other trying to get to the wall first. It's all about what they see and what their world they interpret, how that makes them feel in their own decisions.
web of relationships, and you can react to those relationships and exert control over your situation. And at level 4, that's when you realize everyone is in their own situation. That's where we get the classic folk wisdom of don't judge somebody until you've walked a mile in his shoes. You are in this situation over here, but imagine if you were him in this situation over here. Maybe you would have done what he did too. That doesn't come online until you get the second person perspective at level 4. When level 4 was brand new, it was basically medieval empires. It says mythic empires here, nation states. Basically large groups of people that lived by a set of rules that they shared. As opposed to the do what you want mentality of level 3, level 4 focuses on good versus evil. The entry to that level is called the diplomat because of the way that they focus.
Social norms rule over personal needs. Acceptable behavior, being seen favorably, self-protection sought to approval by conforming to expectations. Yeah, I was about to say level 4, like on that diagram you had. Let me just go back. Wish I knew how to do, like, is it this button? Huh? Oh, it's my email. Let's close that. Where is that image? This image? Where is it? This one? I was thinking, I was like, that's the coach, or that's your team captain, right? Now, I think the thing about this, when we get to level 5, which obviously we'll talk about soon, but the thing about your team captain, like they're handling like one group. So maybe this is your sprint group, and you have your group captain who's looking at everybody, keeping everybody in line. Then you have your the other second team captain who's handling another group, right? And he's responsible for keeping their group together. And then it's the coach or whoever else is above both of them. I say this might be group leaders, right? But the actual captain above, who's at the 5, is like, okay, I need to make sure that the sprinters who are dickheads and to everybody, because they're in the promised land doing no yards, they get along well with everybody, right? They're cracking jokes, but it's not getting to a point where it's fisticuffs, right? So, and you can even think about that as a business structure, right? Managers respond to the lead of whatever branch, and then you have your underlings, right? So, cool stuff. Let's move it back to where we were.
Behavior and social norms. That's their way of getting over the problems from the previous stage. You can tell when second-person perspective is coming online in children because they start looking in the mirror more. They start to realize, oh, I have other people looking at me the way that I look at other people and I have feelings about them. They're looking at me and having feelings about me, so I better be up to their expectations.
All right, this is one of my favorite pieces of coaching. Because especially with the boys, the girls too, but they come at it from a different angle. But with the boys, they're so caught up in themselves and just their immediate trying to win and whatever, that when you start explaining to them how their behaviors affects the group, it's very cool to watch them begin to transform who they are, right? With the last group of 10 and unders I had, there was always, the fast kids moving up, but we would hold back like the bottom rung of the fast kids because they were going to be the group leaders. Now, at the time when they're in the bottom rung, they're like playing around. It's not on them to lead the group, so they're just fast, but they're like not taking it seriously, right? And all of a sudden they're leaders and everybody's following their lead. So now they have to understand that there are people looking at them the way that they see themselves in the mirror and judging what they do as acceptable and following them. And like, I remember we got the point to where like we had everything working like clockwork with the drills. And a lot of the times, like if kids didn't know what was going on in their lane, like I'd get mad at the lane leader, right? Like, why doesn't he know what he's doing? Person or kid, let's just say, I'm not gonna say that. That's an actual kid. Sammy, why doesn't Jessica and Diedrich, why do they not know what's going on? Right? And then it also becomes like if, sometimes you have kids who don't, like leaders who ain't paying attention. And it's like, I remember one time I had to sit down everybody and be like, who's the most important person in the lane? And they go, oh, the first person? Like, no, the second person. All right. The second person is responsible for knowing that's annoying. Knowing everything that's going on in case the first person isn't paying attention. Right? So now they're like, oh man, there's people counting on me, looking at me. And it also makes it easier, right, for them to step into that leadership role. But yeah, it's that's with the boys. But with the girls, let's see, how would I say, I guess they kind of take to it a lot more easy, but they just have moments where they just have like complete absent-mindedness and mess up. But yeah, it's just interesting. The girls are probably, at least I've noticed, I'm not gonna say more timid, but I've noticed that there's like almost a discomfort in telling people what to do, right? And you kind of got to frame it as like it's love. Like I care about your success, and I'd say that's a lot of point. Like when I talk to them, it's a lot of these kids. It's like you're like you being on their case or like mad or telling them what to do isn't like being malicious. It's like I don't want you to get in trouble. Like I want you to get better. Like I need to be good so you can have someone to race so you can be good. Yeah, it's about caring for each other. So, hook 'em horns on that one.
Level 4 is the beginning of what we traditionally refer to as morality. Here again is the woman seeing man bad on her phone, and then she feels like, well, maybe this man is bad because my phone said so. She's projecting that onto him, having a negative experience, and then deciding what to do about it. I'm going to break up with this guy. He must be bad because I felt like it was true when I saw it on my phone. And then out here, she takes a step back and looks at herself as if she is a second person, which is why they call it second person perspective, and thinks, is that the right thing to do? This is the first point where it becomes obvious that consciousness is important, because a lot of people see things on their phones or on TV, and it gives them a feeling, and then they see that feeling coming from others, and then they do something about that relationship. So they might begin treating somebody poorly because they saw something on their phone that made them feel like, well, if that's happening here, it must be happening here too. And it's not.
If that's happening here, it must be happening here too. I say I've dealt with that in real life, but I would say, yeah. So yeah, this is the leadership thing, right? Like they're seeing the leader mess up. It's like, oh, if he can do it, I can do it. All right, if this leader is doing it, the leader in the other lanes are doing it. That means they're probably messing up as I am, so it's okay. So yeah.
Until you slow down enough to get to level 4 that you can take a step back and ask yourself, is this a valuable process? The way that level 4 typically functions is through conformity and agreement. I believe this is the wrong way to behave. I believe this is the wrong way to behave. Agreeing on what's right and wrong and creating a set of rules and following them can solve some of these earlier problems, but also there are an infinite number of ways to decide what is right and wrong. You can have this set of rules over here.
Awesome. And as a leader, you decide what's right and wrong, right? You are absolutely crazy if you are letting 9 and 10-year-olds dictate, who are, like we're talking about, are on lower levels of thinking. If you're letting them dictate what's going on, you are a failure of a leader. You're not there to be their friends. You're an adult. You're there to be a mentor. If you're young enough, maybe like a big brother figure to them, but big brothers still pick on and piss off their little brothers, right? They just don't give them everything they want. So yeah, I think this is fabulous. This part right here is fabulous. The beginning of morality, like you said, we talked about, being a good leader, how the second person is the most important because people are counting on you. And if you're not doing your part and paying attention, then people are not going to do well. You need to step up so people have people to race and practice so y'all can get better together. Iron sharpens iron. Yeah, like, well said. Well said. Yeah, let's keep it rolling.
Level 5 introduces objective observation as a value. Basically, okay, you guys think A, B, C is right, and you guys think X, Y, Z is right. Well, let's figure out which one is better. And in order to do that, you have to take another step back into a third-person perspective. So again, the first 3 levels are all about me, and then level 4 is if I was another person in...
And this is where they say, like in jobs, like experience matters, right? Because obviously you can test it. to figure out what works, like we did with Rakely, rock, paper, scissoring it. Like pretty much everything they're about to describe is how we came up with this Rakely content. Figuring out what's the best stuff, who learned what from these other elite teams. Is it the same thing? We test it to see if it is the same thing. If it isn't, okay, which one's faster? Which one can I combine with these other skills that works the best to progress a stroke? Okay, this one that's faster doesn't. Okay, is there a variation of the second option, or that I can take in the best option and put it in with everything else to work? Fantastic.
Culture, how would I view my behavior? And then level 5 is another step back. If I was an alien or a stranger, how would I view my culture? This also enables you to view other cultures and sets of social norms. That's why it's global. It's the first time that you can go, oh, I get why they're like that, because they're from somewhere else. Level 5 has only really been around for a few hundred years, and it is basically where we get science and the assembly line and other forms of modern conveniences. Level 6 is where things get really fun. You might remember how it went for me. Level 5 is into objective observation, but level 6 recognizes the role of the perceiver. A different perceiver is going to equal a different perception. That brings in the fourth person perspective. So down at 1, you have me and my needs, the way I relate to others, and the way I get my way in my social situation. And then you take a step back. What does my behavior look to others around me? And what rules do we make about that? And then another step back. What would our set of rules look like to a different group of people? And then level 6, you step back again, and well, the way that you are looking is going to determine what it looks like. So when you look here, you'll see one thing, and when you look here, you'll see another thing, and when you look here, you'll see a third thing, because of who you are and where you came from. So there isn't really any way to objectively observe.
I would say that this is where empathy starts. You start creating empathy or developing the skill of empathy, because now, like you said, how you see things, right? If I'm looking at this coaching scenario, right, and I see the sprinters behaving one way, which is adversarial to the way that the middle distance and distance swimmers behave. Because I came up as a middle distance swimmer, I may be like, okay, I can see the differences and they're wrong, right? Whereas at the empathy level, it becomes, okay, as a sprinter in this group, based on their upbringing and where they all came from together and now how they all organize and behave, because they're in that group, they behave that way because that is in the best interest of them, right? That's in the best interest of this faction getting better. Right now, how can I maintain that without disrupting the other two groups, right? So that's where empathy comes from. You got to start, because the way, and this is why he was bringing this up, if I'm a middle distance swimmer, when I put myself in their shoes, I'm still me. And I'm going to be like, this is wrong because I'm still me. I'm in their shoes. I would not do this. That's not empathy. And that's what a lot of people do, right? A lot of people do, where they look at something and you hear people say it's low IQ thinking because it's a lower level thinking, right? They're saying, I behave like this, so everybody behaves like this, right? They're not using empathy, right? They're using a very self-centered way of thinking. And that's why I said, it's not till, 29, your late 20s, 30s, where you start being like, oh man, I was self-centered, because you start to realize like, oh, even though I was being empathetic in that point, I thought I was being empathetic based on what I thought empathy was, which even if it's correct, like you're actually being the true version of empathy and their vested interests and the things that make them function, and you're thinking about, okay, if I was them and I learned the same things, I would agree with them. As you get older, you start to see like, oh man, I still had some other biases in there that could have made me a better coach, right? And that's where we get into this failure mechanism, which is, ironically where we stopped on, where it's like, at a certain point in your life, depending on how successful you want to be, you have to be like, I cannot make these mistakes anymore, right? I need to get through these errors as quick as possible. And that takes time getting through them as quick as possible, testing one after one after one after the other. Now, there's a way to do that quickly. We're not going to talk about that. But a biggest way you can save time is you need to fail grander, right? Where your failure encompasses more aspects so you can get more data points and feedback. Right, and a lot of times when you do that, you'll Like you may have one of these 3 points that's adjacent to the one you tested, and it's like, okay, like even if I had changed this in this huge failure, it would not have worked, or it would have worked. And then you test it, you go for a big failure because now maybe there's other pieces, data that get in there, and you can learn faster. So very, very cool. Back to it.
Being able to objectively observe can feel weird. Level 6 is very new. There were a few philosophers talking at that level in the 1800s, but it didn't really show up in mainstream society until 1960s America. So because the way that you're looking determines what you're going to see, that means there are multiple perspectives that are valid because we all have a unique personal subjective reality that's not observable to others. Basically, how do I know that the red that I see is the same as the red that you see? Maybe my red is your green. From the fourth person perspective, there's no way to know. Level 6 is a really good example of why higher development.
And the way that you would know is by trial and error. Right, or living a life of experiences, right? Like I've joked around with this on my Rakely stuff. I'm a slumdog millionaire, right? I've been through so many avenues in my life where I have a lot of answers that people don't have, right? Like being in places with great freestylers where I had all their different information. Like there's things that Ricky told me when I was in college that didn't make any sense, that when I learned sprinting and power from David, boom, it all made sense. Right? I was the older brother who sucked, who had a little brother who was dominant, right? I was the fast older brother with a not as successful little brother later in my life. I was the older brother who was an afterthought. I was the older brother with a younger brother who was the afterthought, living in the shadow, right? I was the kid who was successful and thought they knew what they were doing and later found out they didn't know what they were doing. I was the athlete who learned a lot more than my peers and was able to be successful with it. I was the athlete who did that, but then learned later that I did not know what the hell I was doing, right? So I think, and a lot of that comes from trying to do things big, right? Trying to fail big and learn big. So that's how you get that perspective and understanding like what people are going through, which, makes you a better coach. Right? Like I was the athlete who needed to learn the actual skills to tap into my talent of my, glorious God-given genetic gifts. But I had to work and master certain athletic skills and technique skills before I could even use my advantages. They were detriments up until that point. So I'm able to connect to the kids who are going through that and be like, yo, like you can be a good kicker or whatever. In our Rakely content, like this is how we're going to help you tap into your greatness. We're going to do kicking this way, and if you master this way, I promise you, because I have experience, that you will become an elite kicker, right? And great story. I had this kid, shout out to Owen, who was a terrible kicker. He was like a plus 2 minute kicker, and he never kicked back. I'm big on using the knees. I believe the splash moves you forward, not the hips or kicking underwater. That just seems like a bunch of stupid, especially when you consider fluid dynamics. But anyway. I remember telling Owen yo, like you can do it. His mom wanted me to kind of be more encouraging, and it's like, yo, that's a lie if I do that, because it's not, what he's doing isn't encourage worthy, right? Or praiseworthy, I guess is the right term. But it's like, yo, like I know you can do this because I have experience where other kids who have done this, like you're missing half your kick. If you add the second half, which especially what nobody else uses and other teams that we compete against, you're going to have an advantage over them, and you're going to start developing your muscles, and it's going to help you develop your posterior chain because now you're actually engaging it. And, about 3 or 4 months later from the time I talked to his mom, he's going like 145s, 147s, 100 kicks, right, with yards. Like that. One day I remember he came to practice, and all of a sudden I just saw him bending his knees. And he's usually like in the back of the lane, falling super hard behind, catches up to everybody, goes right by them. And it's just like, yo, like you've been good this good. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. But it's like, yo, you've been this good this whole time. You just like, you weren't tapping into your gifts because you didn't know what to do, right? And a lot of times that happens on accident. But when you have experience, you can control these variables and help everybody optimize and achieve higher.
is not always necessarily better. It is a very high degree of moral development, recognizing the validity of everyone's perspective. But let's say, for example, that there's a problem going on down here. Let's say that this guy did something that is considered morally wrong in this culture. But wait a minute, he says, that's how we do it where I'm from. So when level 6 goes crazy, they start saying things like, we can't make this guy follow these rules just because he's here. He has these rules where he's from. And who are you to judge which set of rules is better? We should recognize everybody's unique.
Right? And he said this is where he starts getting stuck. And this is when I emailed him, I was like, this is why I told him, I was like, your free will, like, it gets into like, I'm not saying I'm like religious. I'm very spiritual. I think it's all the same God. I think it's different. It's like a weird Jenga puzzle piece, pizza piece, where it's like, it's in quarters, but then you have like chunks missing and then chunks from other texts that are like in it within that pizza slice. So like, anyway, I believe that some crucial parts that kept him from kind of smoothing this out for him as he was going through it was that he wasn't applying like a guidance. I think I said this about sports is a great way to people to learn how to do this because you have a directive, so it's easier to take the guesswork out of this, like who am I to judge out of it, because you have a directing force that you're using, right? And free will, I think, is another great thing. And religion is a great way, right? Because now it's not a guesswork. You have your idea of what's right, and now when people come into your culture, it's, no, this is how we do things here. Like, we understand where you're from, and we will do our best to respect it, but if it conflicts with what we believe in, this is what we believe in. So you have a choice to make now, right? And I think people who are very low-quality individuals, they'll try and manipulate somebody by lying to them or, what's it called? Not compensating, not palpitating, what is it? Like appeasing them. Appeasement when it's something they don't actually agree with. So it's going to come out eventually that you lied to them, or you're going to like chastise them eventually because you don't actually believe it. Like, it's going to go wrong. It's going to go left. You know, I know a lot of this. I ain't know. Whip. A lot of coaches prey on, I'm not going to say misinformation, although that's definitely a part of, but the ignorance of kids and parents to keep them under their thumb, right? Like, I always look at it like, I personally, like I said, I'm a high performer. I'm trying to fail big. Like, I want my parents to know what's going down, right? I want them to have everything. I want them to challenge it, because the thing about this, and this is where I think you can see these people are weak and deserve to be, annihilated competitively, is when your beliefs are challenged, two things are going to happen. One, you're going to change your beliefs, or two, you're going to believe what you believe that much more, right? Which goes once again into our regular content. Like, taking all these perspectives and challenging what I believe has made it to the point where I can call something a AAA time standard product, which, we're going to take a break and go into this sponsorship by Rakeley Swimming. It's a lie, guys. It's a lie. Being successful, while it may not be easy, does not have to be difficult. All you need is the right information. How high do you want to achieve? You want junior national cuts? You want quad A times? You want to put a roster of athletes into a championship meet? What level of performance do you want? Picture this. Imagine that level of performance, and you have $29 and you stick it in a vending machine, and you get spit out at you 2 halves of an egg. 1 half has the information from the athletes. This is the results that their information has combined for. 32 Olympic gold medals, 9 silver medals, 9 bronze medals, 12 world records, 16 American records. That is what we're getting on 1 half of the egg. The athlete's perspective and what their information and their knowledge has allowed them to max out their talent and given them. Then on the other half, we had the world's 2 best coaching philosophies. Philosophies that combined to win 27 of 35 NCAA championship titles. That is combined to have American records in the 50 and 100 free, world records in the 100 and 200 backstroke and breaststroke, the 100 meter fly, and the 200 IM. Not to mention American records in all yards races. Close your eyes with me again. You take that $29 and you put it in that vending machine, you get the two halves of that egg spit out. And as you grab them both, they mold together. And in this golden egg of the world's best information, from the world's best athletes and the world's best coaching philosophies, it is already pre-organized and ready for you to use to take and pick what you need for your age groups to get the results that you want. That is what we are doing here. We are here to give you the solution through swimming technique, through information passed down from these athletes and these coaches to allow you to control your outcomes and get what you want. Getting better and achieving at a high level isn't easy, but I'll tell you this, it's definitely not hard. They lied to you. I think it is easy. Because if you have the information, the only thing that's left is how hard are you willing to work and time. And if you're a hard worker and you got time, you know you can do those things. The only thing you're missing is the information. And therefore it's easy. You know you can pay the cost to be the boss. And now it's time to get what you want. By filling out the information below, you're going to be taken to a page with a video that's going to take you much more in depth into the actual technique solutions that we are going to provide to you that's going to allow you to pinpoint the results you want and the time standards that you want to achieve. Like I said, the two halves of the eggs together, organized to get you what you want. Welcome to the winning team. Welcome back. Now, like I was saying before, we can call it a AAA time standard because we've gone through all these filters. We've had our ideas challenged. I've challenged my own ideas. I've ran it through different athletes, different kids, athletic, unathletic, naturals, tall, short, skinny, fat, whatever you want to call it, green, Martian, one arm, autism, Down syndrome. You don't know. Okay, I'm really out here. And so when I say that this stuff works, it's because I put the hours in to make sure it worked. I wasn't no guess. I hate guessing. What do they say? I hope is a terrible offensive strategy. So we get out there and we test it. And when you have these perspectives and a direction, it's very easy for you to figure out no, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. And you can use honesty to bring people on board because now they know they can challenge you if you fail them, which is something you should embrace if you're trying to do right by them. Because when they challenge you and you mess up and you come back, and I said this in the beginning with the kids, right, on that low level we were talking about it. When I mess up, it's yo, that's my bad. And I can explain, articulate why it's my bad. And now they're okay, he's not just saying that because he's trying to get me to shut up. He actually cares. And they can feel that. Congruency. You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? Congruency, right? I think I said that, an hour ago? Still congruent, right? And I didn't plan this. I don't have notes today. This is all freestyle, this conversation. So it took a lot of work to become this congruent, trust me. But that's what we want to strive for, to where the things we say just because of who we are still ring true at every level, to where people are no, Dax is who he says he is. My coach is who he says he is. The program we're in is what it says it is, right? And I know if the program fails me, I know it won't be because they lied to me, okay? I know it'll be because they tried and it just wasn't in the cards. And that's what we should be striving for as coaches. And this is why this video is so important, I think so, too, if you want to be an elite coach. If you just want to be some, Tom, Dick, and Harry dirtbag who's just lying to parents and kids, then watch your back. I'm coming for you.
Perspective. And that can and often does give people the idea, I guess I can just do whatever I want because who are you to judge? That's why we have problems like this. And yeah, some of these people are unfortunate and that's sad, but some of them are just doing whatever they want, and we now have laws that don't distinguish between them because who are you to judge? So at this point, there is this white break in the chart, and that's because we are moving up to second-tier consciousness. And what that means...
Religious piece that I forgot about. So this is where I think something he struggles with was struggling with. I haven't spoken to him. I was just I watched this video and emailed him because I was I use this every day at a high level, I think. Well, I know I do. I've rock, paper, scissors did. I've challenged myself to make sure I am. But if you've ever seen the vibration chart, low vibration, I'll look it up and put it on here at the end. Low vibration, high vibration. What he's about to get into is high vibrational thinking, where it becomes you remove your ego from things, right? So it's not, I'm not doing this because I want to do it. I'm doing it because it's what's best. And it may make me, I may not like it, but I'm going to do it because it's what we need. And that's kind of what we start getting into. And that's also something I think, why I said I think it's something that he was struggling with, is he kind of was just doing this stuff, at least based on what he said, to do it, not necessarily with a direction in mind. Like I said, with sports are a great way to learn this stuff because you have a direction and you can apply that to screen out what you want to do. With the vibration, understanding your direction becomes a lot better because your ego, you have to remove your ego from it to get to that higher level vibration, right? So when you're doing things, it's not because you're doing it because of it makes me feel good, right? Which is low level. If you think about this as a vibration chart, it's low level vibration, very egocentric C thing, like you said in the beginning, right? So yeah, if I do talk to him, I didn't mention that in my email, but that's something I want to talk to him about, is that this almost, like, I'll put it up. It's like almost the exact same. Like you could just put it on. Like if this, you see this purple to pink and you just stuck the vibration chart on top of it, it matches up almost identically. It's pretty cool.
Is that level 7 is the first level that can understand and include all the previous ones. At level 6, they still insist that they're correct and no one else is. For example, at level 4, you might have a Christian church and a Muslim mosque next door arguing over who has the true faith. But at level 6, we can all get along, we just need more understanding, when that's not what either of those groups wants. So even if level 6 says that they're about equality, they're saying we all need to be equal even if we don't want to. And it's not until level 7 that we understand how to actually give.
Like I said, this is the way we do things. This is how we're going to do it. I'm not going to lie to you, and hopefully we will make it work. And if we don't, we'll eat that sandwich when we get there. But this is how we're going to do it. And I think you got to be able to do this because the only thing people, especially people at lower levels, the only thing they can really trust, and the only thing that really we can all trust, is our own self-interest. Our vested interest. That's the only thing you can really truly trust about the other person, is they're going to do what's best for them, right? So once you understand that, and like I said in the very beginning about the time travel concept, and you understand how when you were in that place, what your vested interest is, it is very easy to get people on the same page. Very easy, because you understand where they're coming from, what's in their best interest, and how to make someone else's best interest their best interest, and vice versa. As long as we get this thing in the end, we can put aside our differences to work towards this thing that's going to serve both of our differences. And because we now have tangible evidence that when we put aside our differences and work towards a common goal, our separate entities thrive. So now we don't need to try and kill each other or fight each other. We can just know we can stay separate, which, like you said, they don't believe in being separate, but they will believe in being separate when they see that their cooperation serves them both, right? So coaching, once again. Like, I mean, I know, especially, at least I've dealt with it, where the guys and the boys and little boys and girls don't want to swim together, right? Perfect example.
Each previous level what it wants to have so that they can live in harmony. At level 7, this fourth-person perspective gets expanded through time, which creates awareness of the self as a history of your own experience.
So this is kind of what I'm talking about with the time travel thing. He's about to start going over it. So you look, the way I explained it, right? You think about like you, let's say me, right? And all the experiences I've been in, right, with Pearsall learning his stuff, right? So now I can look at it and be like, okay, Pearsall said this because this is what he believes in. Like his backstory really at this point isn't irrelevant. It's just whatever happened to him made him believe this, right? So now when I talk to Surhoff about backstroke and Surhoff says something else, I can understand why he's saying that, because of the me and Pearsall that I am accessing through empathy. And I can see how Pearsall might see this thing and say it's wrong, right? So I don't even need to test it because Pearsall says it's wrong, right? Now, that's an ego thing, because my experience saying Pearsall is the GOAT, if he says it's wrong, it's wrong. Remove ego. Maybe he's right based on his background. Maybe Austin's right. Test it now. So anyway, the time travel thing, like you have all these different levels of thinking about who you are, the you that's in the people you learn from. That's where certifications and cloud and having that degree come from, because it says like, okay, they have this level of experience and understanding, right? So there will be a point where Rakely will be a worldwide brand, and it's like you want to be a Rakely coach. You want to be an ASAC coach or whatever it is, ACSA. You want to be that. You want to get that Rakely insignia. You know what I'm saying? Because if you got that, that says you up there, you outside, right? But it's those things allow people to discern who you are and what you know and if they should trust you and whatnot, right? But only that comes from learning from these other sources. So when he talks about this time travel thing, I think it's tier 7, understand that's like you begin to see the you and the empathy and who you are at each level. And then remember, at each level, there's other levels underneath you scoured over. So it's like who you are at this level and all the levels scoured underneath you and at each level. And then you kind of go like, okay, me at this level, seeing me at this level believes this, but me at this level believes this. How can I unite these things to make an answer through my free will or my target goal, right? Sports, religion, vibration, to make better decisions or to move everybody towards a goal. Hopefully that made sense.
Level 6, everyone has their own view, and so who's to say who's right and who's wrong? But at level 7, you take yet another step back and you realize that that unique view didn't come from nowhere. It developed over time, and everybody else is developing over time. So and
if you've ever heard the old saying where they say, time is money, time equals money. Time is a placeholder for money, right? You pay for college to learn from, say your professor's 60 years old, you are downloading his 60 years of experience for what you pay, right? So with Rakely, right, we're $29 a month. You are at $29 a month downloading everything I've learned, and you have it today, right? So that's how, you think about time, a way that you can avoid, mistakes. Like this is how the whole game works, right? Is by paying for people's time. You've heard that, right? You pay people's time. There's probably a head coach who can run every group in practice, but that is not a great use of his time. So he hires people to run other portions and groups, right?
Level 6, because we are all the same, everybody belongs wherever. But at level 7, since we know we all change over time, people belong where they fit the best. So, for example, does this behavior fit here? If not, then it has to go where it belongs. And if it does, then we can all learn something new from it. That's why I called it Harmonize, because it's no longer about radical inclusiveness. It's about recognizing interrelated systems and how they are either synergistic or clashing. Radical relativism and radical inclusiveness, they sound nice, but they do create a lot of clashing. People who are at level 7 tend to naturally recognize development without studying this chart or any of the stuff it came from, and it's pretty fun to see. I
did not think about this. Like I saw this chart last week, I think, and yeah, this is just kind of something. I took a lot of it from movies. I think there's a lot of truth. You kind of got to be a little conspiracy theorist to get it, but there's a lot of this stuff you will find in movies. They throw it in your face. I always say that, it's kind of funny. I'm not going to tell the story behind it, but we'll do that some other time. It's not a bad, raunchish story or anything, but the best place to hide is in plain sight. And movies throw a lot of stuff in plain sight, like force, use your feelings, which is your instincts. There's so much stuff that's thrown in your face, and I was able to figure out a lot of this stuff by watching movies, and taking it, and it's like, oh, that's interesting. Like, does it actually exist in the real world? And if you use empathy, and you can kind of see how people believe things, and you can see like, okay, I can see how this thing isn't exactly what it says it is, but there's a more literal version, tangible version that's true, and this thing that they're showing in this movie that doesn't exist is actually a thought process or a feeling, right? So anyway, let's get back to it.
one of my life coaching clients a question, and he said, well, a little while ago, I would have answered it like this. And before then, I would have even answered it like that. And maybe a few years ago, I would have answered it like this. But now... And so he told me all about his development through the levels as his answer to the question. As far as I know, there is not yet any large collection of people at level 7. You can find a lot of these people in San Francisco, and you can find a lot of these people in New York, and you can find a lot of these people in Alabama, and so on. So let me know if you think that you're up at this level. I'm trying to build a time army so we can all get together and work on all this from up here. And I'm not...
Which is why I sent him the email.
really sure if these numbers are accurate. I get more confident the lower it goes, but I know I enjoy meeting them because their ability to naturally balance and synergize things and put everything where it belongs means that they're going to be instrumental in solving a lot of the problems caused by the previous levels. The levels get more difficult to explain the higher they go. You may have noticed there's a lot of words here. And level 8 is pretty rare. I don't meet a lot of people who are stably at it, and even when I do, I don't think they spend a lot of their time there. So level 8 appears when you take another step back from this, and we are now witnessing ourselves change over time in the moment. As you behave, as you think and feel, new parts of you emerge from the ether. That's what it means to be construct aware. It means that you're watching your own mind construct itself as you go. So at level 8, you can see all these different parts of yourself kind of coming out to play. For example, you could look at an image of a donut or a donut sitting on a plate, and you can go, I'm feeling many things right now.
So we would call this connecting to your inner child, right? And I think this is where, as a coach, like if you're able to get here, there's a true level of mastery here because, and this is why I say the thing about feelings and how getting good with women as far as dating really helped because you have to understand like how who you are makes them feel, right? And when you get to this level 8, you have to be able to connect to the time, right? The time versions of you, the variants of you to connect with your athletes, right? So when I have I can't say his name. Let's just call him E for now. E is like running over kids in practice, like racing everybody, and he doesn't try until he wants to go fast. I'm able to look at how other people look at him, how parents look at him, how his brother looks at him, how the girls on the team look at him, or in his group, the 9-10 girls, how I look at him through when I was a good coach, when I was becoming one of the greatest coaches. And yeah, I say that because it's going to be true. Have some confidence in yourself. And when you got control over your environment like this stuff we're talking about, of course it's going to become true. But I'm able to look at all these angles at the donut, right? Like he's showing, which is E, the kid, and connect with him. Because I understand his base level, which is C thing. He wants this. All right. I remember what that's like. Now I can talk to him about how to get that through all these other vantage points of my life, of what he's going to go through if he continues down this way versus like how 9 him projects to 11-year-old him and how all those same levels of people are going to look at him and how this projects to 14-year-old him and how all those people are gonna project to him, right? And we talk about the feelings piece. I'm able to think about like, okay, how does that make me feel without my prejudice? Like when I just say like, this person does this, right? And now talking to him, I can say, and this is why I say the time travel thing. I can talk to E and say, bro, like you're better than this. Like, and they say, and this is why I love women, like getting good with girls will take your life, your coaching to the next level. Is so much of communication with girls is nonverbal. So like when I'm talking to E, it's, and I say the kids that connect, kids and women, grown women, all levels of women and children smell bullshit a mile away. So I'm able to make sure I'm giving him the most congruent, authentic version of what's happening now, what will happen, when he's 10, 11, 12, and that feeling, and I can put all of that feeling into my body language, into my communication to him to make sure he feels what his future is and what's happening now without talking about his future. Put it all into the feeling, right? And because of how I treat them and the congruence of how I'm coaching them, he can feel that I'm not lying to him, right? And he ended up coming around and, barely missed his BB time at 9 years old. And usually for me, at least, if I get a kid to go at BB time at 9 years old, they're going AAA quad A times, but before they age out. Batting 1,000%. Yes, sir. Shout out to Rakeley. Get in there, download our content. Welcome to the winning team. But, they have these moments where I remember he was picking up a little bit, but he still wasn't at like the 10 of 10 effort we want to see. We're like, okay, yeah, his kid's going to make it. And he went that time, and it's just like, we came back to practice the next day, and it's just like, I sat him down. Like I said, you got to be real with these kids. And it's like, I asked them all, I was like, what is he doing in practice? He's like, is he playing around? And the kid's like, yeah, we're all having a laugh at it. We call him Turkey Man. I forget why. Oh, yeah, he was scared to do something one day. So I was like, you being a turkey? We all had to laugh out of it. But it's just like, you have this moment where they do well, and it's just like, this is what I'm talking about, all right? And this is him now, and you can feel the shift of all those levels of the perspective around E. You can feel it change, right? And that's why I say it's like time travel, and we're not going to get into the hocus pocus stuff about like being a multidimensional being or anything, but that's like, to me, that's what it feels like. Like I can feel all the levels of people in his life. Like that, when I think about the bad feeling of what he was doing wrong projects and how that felt and communicating that to him, that bad feeling, I can feel it shifting into something like lighter and more higher vibration. Like you can see, I can feel it. I can feel the future, how people feel about him and the future him and how he feels about himself. I can feel it becoming lighter, So, and then they're inspired too. It's like, oh man, like he's right. Like I have been playing around. And I still almost made it. Like I barely started working hard. I made it. It's like, imagine. And it's just like, and I think that's the cool part about it, multidimensional, whatever, is that's their mental shift that them in that level 8 is also seeing, right? And when you get into manifestation, like this is what manifestation is. But it's that bridge between the level 8 version of him and who he is now, taking a step at it, that from both ends, that pathway getting closer. Even though it's miles apart, there is now a bridge on each side that's moving closer, right? And maybe he's going to mess up and come all the way around, but you can feel it, right? You can feel his manifestation like changing time. It's going to get a little hocus pocusy, but I'm elite for a reason. You know what I'm saying? Got to be able to go to places that ain't nobody willing to. That's what being elite is. People say don't do it. You do it. Do what everybody's not willing to do. And you're going to look crazy. You're going to sound crazy, but you're going to win, though.
Feeling hunger for the donut because it's good, but I'm also feeling a sense of guilt from one time that I ate a whole box of donuts that were not meant for me, and then somebody gave me...
And that's where direction comes in. Because it's like, for me, it's like, oh, I remember I wanted to eat those donuts. They were good. Like, a lot of time, like, stuff like, and that's why I say the congruency and the authenticity part of it. Authenticity? Whatever. Where there's times kids will do some stuff that I do, and it's like, okay, well, how does this project through time, right? Okay, he shouldn't do it, but I ain't tripping. Like, it ain't gonna blow up in his face or nothing, right? So it's like, I remember doing that too. And it's like, you feel sick, you make it something to connect about rather than something to feel bad about. But you need direction to know not to feel bad about it because it's not going to mess up their future, right?
Social punishment and shame for that, and I also got a stomachache because I ate too many. I'm recalling that memory as I look at this, and it's influencing what I want to do. So now that I'm aware of all that going on in me, do I want to listen to it or not? Do I want to be the kind of person who just has a donut anyway because I'm an adult and I can do what I want? And it might sound silly when you're talking about donuts, but imagine that this is something like global politics. Or even an interpersonal relationship. Like, yeah, I saw this on my phone and it gave me a feeling, and I'm aware of where that feeling is in myself, and I'm aware that I'm projecting it onto this person, and I'm aware of my impulse for what I should do about it, and I'm aware of what my culture says I should do about it, and then all of that is wrapped up in objective observation and the story of who I am and how I got here over time and how I'm viewing the event because of my personal history. Do you see how that gives?
In all honesty, this may be, I don't think he talked about this. He didn't talk about this. I think it's better if you look at each level as a feeling. Not an emotion, a feeling. How do I feel about this? Or, oh gosh, I may have to just drop this idea. I haven't really ironed this out. Yeah, never mind.
A lot more power to change your behavior in situations like this. Imagine if more people could see something and then see their own reaction to it instead of just reacting, and then know where that reaction comes from in terms of their history and their culture. Think how much more power that would give us not to just react in the moment. That's why you should be thinking about thinking. Anyway, level 9.
And this is something that's kind of cool about this. We think about like the manifestation thing, right? Like, you could have something in your past that's formed, and this is kind of working through the levels, right? You could get to level 8, and then all of a sudden you find like I learned a lot about coaching, honestly, through admitting that some of these kids, when they'd say a drill was stupid. And I would, test it and be like, eventually you're like, okay, this kid's right. And that you have now, with their lens, you can go back and look at everything that's made you who you are and make adjustments, right? So I could have, let's just say I don't know. I won state championship in my breaststroke, right? But now I know that when I was in high school, I know that breaststroke should be swam like this. So I can go back and look at when I won and be like, did I do that? No. Okay, well, if I had changed that, how does that change these things, right? Okay, well, I would have went faster, which means I would have got more money. Okay, well, now I have more money. That affects my family's pockets. It affects how people treat me. It affects how the travel teams I make, which affects my notoriety, which affects maybe getting more scholarship money, maybe endorsement deals. And now when I graduate, that changes my perspective to this versus when I left, I had this perspective. So ultimately what happens is you gain this filter. And I mean, I think in the woo-woo stuff, they call it like a reality shift. But basically this whole way that I've been built, because I have this new information, shifts me who I am now as if I had went through this place that I didn't go through, right? That just I imagined and worked through mentally through all these levels because I got this new filter in the real version of me. And as I changed everything and the outcomes, it changed my ultimate opinion of who I am now and things I want to teach. And now because I'm teaching different things, I'm no longer teaching the old things that would have kept me on this path. I've shifted over to the thought process and the things of me if I had known this when I was 18 years old. So, and that's why I say, like, at least with our content, like, we try and figure out why it's wrong. Like, we run things through filters, bro. And the reason why is you learn faster, right? I find mistakes faster and I can evolve faster and make more jumps. Like, this Rakely stuff, I'd say at its worst, it took me 5 years to get down, 4 years. When did I start putting it together? 2015, 16? 2019, 2020, so 5 years, and then the rest of it's just been fine-tuning it and making the presentation better. But that was also 5 years with no guidance, right? Like, if I had known some of this stuff, like, just imagine, if I had known this stuff when I started coaching, if this resource was available, imagine where I'd be right now. See, reality shifting or timeline jumping, whatever.
Is very hard to describe. I do think that I spend some time up at this level, and the way that it feels to me is,
in an unpredictable world, everything we do is only a gesture or wish. I agree, especially over long stretches of time. Sometimes we're good at what we do and our wishes come true, or so we think for now, sometimes not so much. So this is kind of the reality shifting, I suppose, to a degree. Yeah, it's gestures or wishes. Sometimes they come true because we're good. Me shifting and learning this thing this new version of me was because I was wrong. So it's not always a thing such as is or is not, will or will not. There is only seems to be or not. Correct, because I thought I was right. It seemed that I was right. I was not. And even then, I may find some better information. And this is where, I say I spent a lot of time here. The stuff I had in 2020, I'd say I moved away from it in a very major way once I started doing only one-on-ones, and then once I started doing some club consulting, to the point now where things are starting to circle back to my 2020 material. But I have a new lens and a better way to apply it and explain it. But it's the same. The concept and the aesthetic and the feature was supposed to produce, I was not able to get it done. But now, with that version, you would say that I was wrong because it did not get the results it's getting now. But I had to take that, be wrong, go on this journey, only to come back to the same damn material, but now it's right. This is what I'm saying. I spent a lot of time up in this level. He's probably going to mention something, but let's see if he does before I talk about it.
Like all I'm doing ever is watching and wishing, and that's all I've ever been doing. At these first 3 levels, you are the main character. And at level 4, you understand everyone is their own main character. And then you understand that everyone's watching a different show because everyone is a different show. And that show is constantly evolving and changing over time. And at level 8, you're just watching the show.
I don't know if you've ever seen the meme where it's like they'll have people with like super low IQ and then geniuses, and they'll both agree on the same thing, but the people in the middle are usually wrong and don't, and more susceptible to groupthink. And this is where he's saying like it's almost like all of this seems pointless at a certain level. This stuff at its peak, if we look at, let me see, let's go back. This level, right? This guy in the middle, right? Which is level 1. C thing, right? Yellow line to something else. That is very low level thinking, right? Now, as you get to level 10, you realize that the level 8 in this big diagram is the level 1 in the next level. And this is why I say the thing where you got to get in touch with your inner child. Eventually, it's like, think of level 8 as like God, right? Where you can see everything, what's going on, you can make the right decisions. And now you move into this next level, higher reality, whatever you want to call it, where your level 8 is the new level 1 for the next everything above you, right? Now, you got to ask yourself, is your level 8 actually a level 1? Right? And you're not as advanced as you think you are? Or are you making decisions for your reality, right? Which means you need to be selfish to make sure your reality can continue on so you can move up the new ladder, the new hierarchy. Or are you an idiot and you're actually at level 1? So, did I say that already? I said your reality moves up to a level 1. You're the new level 1, which means you need to do it. Yeah. So you're your reality, you become the new level 1. In the next reality, and you're forced to make selfish decisions, what look like low IQ decisions, so your reality can get what it needs. And the thing is, like, you could get what you need, but then after you get what you need to be able to go back to your reality and look at all the pieces and be like, okay, let me make sure everybody gets what they need. And this is what kind of me saying, it's like, it's almost this pointless exhaustion because you're like not even serving yourself anymore. You are, but the only way you can find, and this is the thing, right? I totally understand where he's coming from. Like, it gets to the point where it's like exhausting. And it's not at the same time. And here's what I mean by that. You get to the point where you're either at level 8 and your level 8 is the new level 1 in a higher level of thinking, right? You're the new level 1. You're actually a level 1 of lower level thinking, and you're just the smartest lower level thinker, right? You move up and you're the highest one. No, you're the highest one, you move up and you're the lowest one operating in a higher level. You're actually the idiot who was just the king of the idiots. What's the third one? And then which one are you? Right? Like it's the idiots agree with the geniuses, like the bell curve, right? So who are you really? And this is what he's saying. Like it's exhausting because then it's just like you're kind of just in the in between, and like the only solace. And this is where he said like it's like you're almost like it's you can get stuck. Like you have to like lower your IQ and be selfish, right? And this is why I say the thing about sports. How you see the congruency, where it becomes so important because when you have that sport, you always have something to bring you back to selfish decisions, right? Which is I say selfish decisions because it's level 1 C thing, but you always have something grounding you, right? Now, when you have religion, you have something grounding you. When you have free will and you know what you want, you have something grounding you. When you have spirituality, vibration, you have something grounding you. If you don't know or your life's purpose, you have something grounding you where you can take all this information and then manipulate those underneath you or whatever to goodness. Now, ideally, that goodness is something that serves everybody, right? Making the world a better place. But like your solace, the only solace in it is being an idiot, like being selfish. That's the only, which is, you know, if you think about it, it's, for lack of a better term, demonic because, you know, 666 is, what is it? It's physical form and it's like ultimate form, which is not of godliness, right? Spirituality is of godliness, which is interesting. Do you know that the only solace, well, it's just not interesting because a life of self-sacrifice is ideally what we should be working for. But, you know, being an earthly being, which, you know, depending on what you believe, you know, earth belongs to Satan or God or not, it makes sense that selfishness would be our solace, you know, if this is the bad guy's place. But yeah, like that's the only place where I can get like a mental reprieve is you gotta realize like I'm at this level versus I'm at level 8 versus all these other level 8s. Let me make myself a decision, right? And you gotta realize like, okay, like trust yourself to do the right thing and do right by people. But yeah, it's like, who are you? Like it's almost like, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? All this thinking just to be selfish.
And that everyone's watching a different show because everyone is a different show, and that show is constantly evolving and changing over time. And at level 8, you're just watching the show happen. You're not even identified with being the show anymore. You're just watching yourself be. So when my mind is up here, it's like, okay, I'm seeing myself, seeing my history and where I came from and what I'm like and what I do, which is made of all this stuff, all the memories and habits from the lower levels. I'm watching myself, observing my emergence over time, interacting with the present moment. I know where I'm from and what that has made me like, and I know what's happening now, and I'm watching them come together, and I'm looking at myself, looking at that. And so how you do the looking is what's important at this level. It's like, what are you looking at? I think you need to be looking at this part right now. I think you need to be looking.
What'd I tell you? Congruence. Wisdom. I ain't playing. Man. And here's the thing, I was thinking about this while I was listening to him, is what gives you, like once you get here, like the thing that makes it less frustrating is you stop thinking about it and you literally do what he's just said. You operate in the lower levels. And you operate it for the same reason that people would go to learn from you, because you've mastered it, right? There's someone they can trust, right? So if you're and this is why I say the congruency and getting in touch with understanding women is so important, because through that, understanding how I am makes people feel. I'm not talking about emotions. We're talking about feel, which is instinct. And as you become, competent and confident in what you do, you have to trust your instincts more, right? So when I'm making decisions, I'd say most of the time I'll plan out at level 8, but I operate in level 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe up to 6. Or I'll come to you're in and out. Level 9, you're like the grand. I'm not gonna say that. You're the eye in the sky. You can just go in and out where you want. But I'd say I spend most of my time in the lower level because the higher the level you are, the more that you are the low level in the next level game, right? So it makes sense mentally. That's where you need to be. So now I'd say that's where I spend a lot of my time, and you just got to trust your instincts, trust your decision making. And as a leader, that's what it comes down to. Like, be congruent, tap into whatever you need to when you need to. But like a lot of times, like I'll see something and I will make a decision operating at level 1, 2, 3, 4. And then after I make it, like I go back and see how this fits, right? Oh, that brings me to another story. And I make the decision and then go look because I'm trusting my instincts, my feelings now, right? Where trusting my feelings is trusting my mastery of level 8 and down, right? So, and like I said, like I said about E, like seeing how all the levels and how everything feels about him and feeling his vibration about all of that change as he's seeing how good he can be. Same thing, right? Like I'm seeing my decision and feeling how my decision is changing me, if it feels good, if it feels bad, and that it feels bad or good based on all that stuff beneath me, right? And this is where I say about the perspective about level 1 is, or even level 5, where it's like I can see all these other groups, but I only think that one of them is right and one of them is wrong because I came up in that group that's right. Right? My feeling about what is right based on just making a selfish decision is only because I came from this version, this reality is level 8, right? And that's where you kind of got to dip up to a higher level 4 of the next thing. And it's just scaling and how frustrated you and mentally exhausted you want to be. But kind of like going with that, the story I thought of, when I was consulting with this team, I stopped. It just happened recently, right? And I would say, and if you're keeping up with my content, even me making these YouTube videos, I'd say this is almost 2 months in, I finally have the mental bandwidth to do these videos, right? So for 2 months, I was recovering from just wearing my mind out, trying to operate at level 8, that now that I'm going back to level 1, what I thought was level 1 was actually level 6. And it's like, damn, I need to keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. And now I'm finally at, okay, I got to level 1. That took me about like a month. And it was like, okay, I'm finally back. And then I keep working. 2 months later, today, or this week, I'd say it's really the week that it happened. It was last week is when I started. It was like, oh man, I thought I was at level 1 ready to rock. And I was actually needed a lot more mental work to get to where I actually needed to be to start doing the YouTube stuff. So yeah, dude, it's just interesting how like when you go through this stuff, it changes how you think. And if you can do it, my business was doing well without me making the selfish decisions for the business. The kids I was coaching and working with and consulting with did well. The one-on-one business did well, but it wasn't growing, right? So I was, whatever level of the higher, whatever I was operating at, I was there killing it, but not advancing. The business wasn't advancing. My life wasn't advancing. And in a lot of ways, it actually fell behind. But yeah, man, it's just, I can't see all this if I didn't go through it, right? So if you want to be elite, like, you got to get control of your mind, master your mind.
Yeah, this function in your life. Maybe you're looking from here when you should be looking from here. So it's like what I'm watching is watching itself. And again, here you would be watching your personal needs, and here you would be watching the reactions of others, and here you would be watching your situation that you're in.
Something that's also interesting is, like you said, most people do not operate that high. I'd say most people, I think he said level 4. So when you make these decisions, you kind of like, people are they're going to give you a pass because, well, you're going to give yourself a pass because you're trying to do what's best for your reality, right? But they're going to give you a pass because they're just like, oh, he's just doing what's right for him. He's making a selfish decision for himself. I would do the same thing. See what I'm saying? Oh, he's making a decision to help him. I would do the same thing. So, and this is where we get into like what makes a good person, morality and all that stuff. But it's just, you realize like, you're almost like stressed about nothing because everybody else they'll do the same thing, right? And this is why I say, like, it's like, are you the idiot? Because now you're way back to this low level thinking where it's like everybody else would do it. So that's why I'm going to do it, which is literally why you made this selfish decision for your reality, is because you know you could get away with it. So it's like, what are you even thinking about this stuff for? You could just been an idiot the whole time. So it's interesting, you know, when you really think about it. But that's why you get to, you know, become the head honcho, because you see all the levels and you can trust your instincts and make the right decisions for everybody. And they'll let you do it.
And here you would be watching what others expect from you. And here you would be watching observable reality. And here you'd be watching where you're from to know how you interpret things. And here you'd be watching what are all your habits and pieces of you put together and how are they interpreting your reality. And here you'd be watching those habits and pieces coming together in the moment and sometimes being surprised by what they do. And then here I feel a responsibility for knowing where to watch those things, if that makes any sense. So yeah, that's this chart and how it works, the levels part of it anyway. The rest of it I'll get into another time. And if you want to move up the levels, the best way to do that is just sit with your thoughts and think about them and figure out where they come from. Here's another example of what that looks like. So sometimes I worry that my little scribbly drawings are kind of embarrassing to show to 200,000 people. So
that's pretty much it. But yeah, like it's fascinating stuff, you know. If you want to max out your capability as a coach and your effectiveness to get people where they want to be, you got to master this stuff, because you got to be able to understand, like, and inspire people and be that congruent figure that can help you get them to the next level, right? But I'd say this, it's not for everybody, because you have to be willing to be wrong. Right? You can't advance without the thing that the last one he showed, which is thinking about thinking. Let's just run it real quick.
Why am I feeling the embarrassment? Well, I guess I'm worried that it's going to have some kind of a negative impact on me. What kind of negative impact would it have? Well, I guess maybe people would not like my channel or might say some bad things about me because I don't have more sophisticated graphic processes. Well, why would it be so bad if that happened? Well, then I might lose out on opportunities that I could otherwise have if I had.
Right. So, but yeah, like you're gonna, like I said, if you don't have a purpose, you need to find one. I'd say if you're going to do this, you need to find a purpose. Right now, maybe your purpose is making your team the best team in the country. Right, you need to have a purpose, because if you don't, you will get stuck. Right, and I've had that happen where you get stuck and it's just like, why am I doing all this just to go back to like this low level of thinking? Like, I did all that work just to come right back to where I started. Right, so it can be discouraging. I'm not sure how much of an IQ thing it is, but just like being a killer mentally or not athletically, competitively, it's not something I would teach to everybody. I would say this classifies in the same way. If you really want to dive in, if you can handle your own disappointment in yourself and your underachievements, because you will find them. And some people just aren't built for that, because you don't get to go back and fix them. Right? This is life. I would not advise it, but I loved the video when I saw it. A lot of stuff I've currently, from my reactions, I forgot a lot of it, you know. But yeah, it's if you can get good at it, it will help your coaching tremendously. You know, you'll be able to see a lot of things happening before. It's a great self-defense mechanism, as you'll be able to see like people's ulterior motives or vested interests and what they're interested in, and be able to align those to move your desires, your interests further. Yeah, great coaching resource. And, you know, we're going to wrap it up. Peace.